Well, for more on these inquests, we're joined now by the ANC Veterans League's Mr. Mavuso Mxenge. We're joined as well by the grandson of Chief Albert Luthuli, Sandile Luthuli, as well as legal analyst Alton Hart, joining us this evening. Gentlemen, a good evening to you. Thank you so much for your time and for availing yourself for this such an important discussion. If you'll allow me, Mr. Luthuli, to start with you and just get the family's perspective upon hearing about the reopening of the inquest, the thoughts of the family. But if you'll allow me also to emote as the grandson, I mean, we're talking about Chief Albert Luthuli's death 58 years ago. As a grandson, the stories of how you've been told was what led up to the death of your grandfather. So the impact of this reopening for the family and just taking us back into how the family has been discussing it for 58 years.
No, good evening, Naledi, and good evening to my fellow panelists here and the viewers at home. Look, it's a very exciting moment for us. It's one that has been in the making for quite a number of years. We are excited in the sense that the moment has finally arrived. But at the same time, there is an element of some anxiety that is there in the sense that over the next 30 days, this will be the pivotal moment that we have been waiting for as a family, as the community of Groundville, as the African National Congress, and the international community to really peel the layers of what really happened on the 21st of July, 1967. So it's really mixed emotions that we are going through at this point in time, but we are very confident that as the inquest proceeds, the truth will be unveiled and the historical record set straight as to exactly what happened.
And just that second part of that question, Mr. Luthuli, if you'll allow me, I mean, you obviously grew up listening to some of the stories that your family shares about your grandfather and the various sort of, I suppose, discussions that you've had about how you characterize how his life was taken.
Yeah. So there's various aspects of our grandfather that we've grown up knowing about. There was the family man, very devoted to his family, very devoted to his community, a very highly religious man. Even during the time of his house arrests, stories are told about him conducting church services on his own. That's the deep-seated religious beliefs that he held. But there is also the political side of his life, which is the one that dominates everything else. It starts with him joining the African National Congress in the 1940s, being elected to President General of the then Natal region, and eventually ascending to the presidency of the African National Congress in 1952. He then proceeds to receive, amongst other accolades, the Nobel Peace Prize on the 10th of December 1960, and eventually meets his untimely assassination at the hands of the apartheid government on the 21st of July, 1967. So that story we know very well. But alongside that is also his wife, Unokhanya Mabhengu Luthuli, who played a very, very significant role in ensuring that she keeps the family fires burning whilst he devoted his life to the work that the African National Congress required him to do.
Yeah. I know that we really appreciate your inputs, and do stay with us as we really look at what we can expect moving forward. We also are joined by Mr. Mavuso Mxenge, of course, of the ANC Veterans League. And thank you so much for your time, because, you know, one of the things that we heard Jeff Radebe talk about just moments ago in the clip that we played, Mr. Radebe, they're talking about the timing of the death of Chief Albert Luthuli. And I know that in the 60s, you had spent some time within the MK, and he talks about the advancement that you know, the freedom fighters were making at the time and the link between that death. So perhaps you can talk to us about, you know, that education. But more, I think, incredibly important, certainly for, you know, even younger generations of the country, is what you think this reopening of the inquest will do for present-day South Africa, Mr. Mxenge.
Is this me that
yes,
is being asked?
Yes,
oh,
sir.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. Jeff Radebe mentioned in his intervention that Chief Luthuli was killed around the time when Umkhonto weSizwe, the real one, and ZIPRA, the Zimbabwe People's Revolutionary Army, were planning to cross the Zambezi River and launch a joint operation for the first time in Zimbabwe. The campaign subsequently got known as the Mxenge campaign. That crossing, that mission had to be postponed upon Oliver Tambo's receipt of the news that Chief Luthuli had died. We were all very shocked, of course, very far, not knowing about the circumstances, but the story that was told was that he was hit by a goods train. I'm happy that the family is seeking closure, because right from the beginning, there was no happiness about this official version of Chief Luthuli's death. There is absolutely no doubt about the fact that he was very committed to the struggle waged in the form that it was. Men of peace who did not really like violence, but he had come to terms with the fact that the situation at the time, as he did indeed indicate when he testified during the Rivonia trial, said the people who have decided to resort to arms should be understood. They are driven by motives of patriotism. I was a member of the Luthuli detachment, and that name was given by Oliver Tambo on the banks of the Zambezi River just before the crossing into Zimbabwe. So I do have a very direct interest, and yeah, I don't know how to describe it. It's never been a comforting story that he died the way he did. When one talks to the members of the family, they say he used to cross that railway line going to his sugarcane fields across regularly, all the time. And he would sometimes say, hey, I need to get ready for this. It's time to go, the train, what. He timed his crossing with the passing of the train. And so it became very difficult because one didn't hear the lack of transparency in the investigation left a bitter taste in people's mouth, the family's mouth.
Yeah. And then, of course, there's the confidence that we might have in this inquest, being able to give certainly the family and the country the answers and closure that's necessary. And, of course, Elton Hart is with us, and he's a legal expert. Elton, good evening to you. Thank you for your time. So this is what we're hearing. The NPA is saying that they're able to offer new evidence such as scene simulations, testimony from a train expert to challenge the original findings that Chief Albert Luthuli died in that horrible train accident. But just the prospects that you see of success here, and really, I suppose, the legwork that is necessary by the NPA.
No, indeed, if one looks at the inquest, because obviously there must be pre-inquest hearings also, and I think the NPA has conducted them to make sure that whoever they're going to call as witnesses to come and testify, that evidence exists to the contrary version that was put before the Luthuli family, the Mxenge family, about how their loved ones died. I'm sure the NPA has done that, and then they can now actually put this evidence before the court so that the court can actually make a decision whether a criminal charge can be laid against the alleged perpetrator. So I'm sure that the legwork has been done already, and I'm sure the NPA, because this is a matter of public interest, and it's been a matter of public interest for the last 57 years, they should make sure that they've got their ducks in a row, because the NPA's record is not so good in prosecuting some of these cases, and they want to make sure. But I'm sure, looking at the inquest of Amo Timor, where they had a fairly successful way of proving that Amo Timor did not commit suicide, it was actually the regime that killed him. Also, the other case, it just slips my mind now, that is already sort of have trendsetters as to how they need to. So they've done this already. And I mean, from hearing some of the snippets of witness evidence, is that Chief Luthuli was very well versed with the running of the train, when it goes, when it comes, and I'm sure the NPA will call witnesses to say, what time did he open the shop, what time did he leave? And from his grandson's word, he was a very meticulous man, if you hear the report of him. So I'm sure he would know 9 o'clock, that train is passing that crossing. I should either be on the other side in my fields, or I should not be crossing that at that stage. For them to say that the train hit him, it's too easy. It's for me, it's like, you know what's going to happen if a goods train comes, because it can't stop. And if you bring experts, they will show you that even if that train sees you at 500 meters away from them, that train can't stop. And I'm sure he was a learned man. He would have known that. So to make sure that he gives himself sufficient time to get over that railway track. But looking at the evidence, or the snippets of evidence that I've already sort of have gathered on my own type of investigation, looking into this, I can think that the NPA is ready to go with this one.
All right, some confidence being expressed there by our legal expert, Mr. Alton Hart. And we want to hear if the Luthuli family shares the same level of confidence. When we come back as well, Mr. Mxenge Mxenge will help us talk to the legacy also of Griffiths Mxenge, the timing of his assassination. Where was our country at that time, and what did that assassination certainly mean? We're taking your calls as well on 072-110-5584. And this is what we want to hear from you. Do you believe that the Luthuli and Mxenge families will finally get closure and justice as we see these historic inquests underway? Give us a call as well on 010-594-6010. We are back in a moment. Stay with us. Welcome back. Well, we continue with this discussion. So the investigating officer looking into the death of Chief Albert Luthuli, Captain Godisamang Kamanyane, says the injuries sustained were not consistent with a train accident. He testified at the inquest today after being appointed to the case in 2019.
That's correct, my lady. From the post-mortem report that we received, it is Exhibit C. Most of the injuries were the head injuries. So it was not consistent with a person who can be struck by a train. That's why we are looking for an expert regarding the simulation to check the possibilities of the injuries together with the accident.
Well, Kamanyane says he's not aware of a reconstruction or simulation being conducted.
Sir, to your knowledge, was any reconstruction and simulation work done by Tivesh Mutli of TMI Dynamic Simulation and Training Solutions? To your knowledge, was any work done by them with regard to the reconstruction and simulation of the sea?
No, my lady. The reason for us to visit the accident scene with Mr. Tivesh Mutli, he wanted to see the accident scene and to check which resources is going to be needed for him to start this simulation exercise.
Well, we continue, of course, getting the view, certainly from the Luthuli family, as we continue our conversation with Mr. Sandile Luthuli, grandson of Chief Albert Luthuli. Elton Hart is our legal expert, and we also are joined by Mr. Mavuso Mxenge of the ANC Veterans League. Mr. Luthuli, you listened to some of the testimony given today. One of the things we talked about before the break with Elton was the confidence that we have in the evidence that can be brought forward if the family is optimistic that you will get a closure. Is there optimism? You talked about anxiety, but it's also about your confidence in the capability of authorities in this matter.
Yeah, Naledi, we are very confident that the outcome that we desire and the country as a whole desires out of this will be achieved. And I say this based on, the thoroughness and the meticulousness with which the DPCI as well as the TRC unit of the NPA has conducted these investigations. I must commend the team that has been working on this. They have been absolutely professional about it, and based on that, we really are confident that an outcome. One of the crucial pieces of evidence that came out during the hearings today in the opening statement of the NPA relates to a letter that was written by the then presiding officer over the inquest, A1, Mr. Boswell, who writes on the 11th of September, 1967, to the Secretary of Justice at the time, and I may be paraphrasing here, but essentially he comes to the conclusion in that letter that he can, based on the evidence that he has seen in the files and that are before him, he can only come to one conclusion, and that is the fact that this was an accidental death. Now, the strange thing about this letter is that it is written on the 11th of September, 1967, when the official inquiry was only going to start on the 19th of September. Meaning that already 8 days before the official start of the inquiry, it was predetermined what the outcome was going to be. But more than the predetermination itself, it actually goes to show the length and depth and breadth of the NPA's investigative work. They've gone into the archives, found this crucial piece of evidence. They have gone to look at medical records conducted at the Stenger Hospital. They've gone and found medical records prepared by the neurosurgeon who conducted an investigation afterwards in Durban. And putting all of that information together, they are finding inconsistencies. And based on those inconsistencies, they came to the conclusion that these warrant that this investigation be reopened. So yes, over the next 30 days, as I indicated, more of this will actually unravel. But I am very, very confident sitting here that the NPA has done stellar work in this regard.
I must say that as you were highlighting that letter, I did see our legal analyst, Elton, nodding there. But I want to come to Mr. Mxenge because we also need to talk about the simultaneous process that we see taking place, of course, a postponement in the matter of the lawyer, Griffiths Mxenge. And this, for me, I think, an opportunity for us to really also, I suppose, enlighten South Africans about just how much work has gone into how we got here. in the late 1980s. What was he working on? And was there something significant about an assassination that led to this Durban lawyer being stabbed 40 times, Mr. Mxenge?
Yes, that was one of the most difficult periods of the struggle, but it was peaking. People always talk about Umkhonto weSizwe, the armed struggle. Yes, it played its role, but there were people internally in South Africa, the UDF and others, who had mounted the level of struggle that the regime just found difficult to manage, and they were extremely cruel. Mxenge was outstanding, together with his wife, by the way, Victoria Mxenge, outstanding patriots in South African patriots. They were good. They were defense lawyers. They defended human rights issues, and the gruesomeness with which they committed his murder. This Kutsia, who came from Vlakplaas, ordered that he should be killed, but not using a knife. So that is why they slit his throat, stabbed him that many times as you're describing, used wheel spanners, the kind of thing that you just could not associate with human beings who call themselves civilized. But also, I think what was most traumatic at the time was that the person, Almond Nofomela, was found guilty of his murder, and he was sentenced to death. And lo and behold, the government of the time excused him, and actually, and he was pardoned. Another one of these people went to the TRC, and that's another very difficult thing in our history. The people who were victims of mistreatment, of torture, of all sorts of heinous crimes, are the ones who seem to have been expected to do the forgiving. And the perpetrators went away. Some of them are still walking the streets in South Africa today. But when you say, let's talk about the era, this was a time when there was international pressure against South Africa. There was armed struggle, bombing things here and there. There was internal pressure by the internal resistance. And the regime was really desperate and surrounded. It was just before they realized that they had no option but to talk peace with the oppressed people of South Africa, then led by the African National Congress. It's an important era. I would just like people to understand that there isn't a single group that waged the struggle. Society got involved in it and were punished for their efforts. In the international community, despite the sympathetic attitude of Western governments to South Africa, but the mass of the people, the ground roots supporters of humanity, supported the struggle in South Africa. So I don't think there ever was in the history of resistance a movement that was as broad and widespread as the anti-apartheid movement, in which the ANC, Oliver Tambo, played a crucial role in fashioning into one of the weapons of the struggle against apartheid.
Yeah, you know, I think these moments of reflection on how far we've come, truly eye-opening for our country that now sits in its 31st year of democracy. Elton, you listened to the matter of Mxenge in the reopening of this inquest, of course, adjourned until the 17th of June, because you've got these members of the former service wanting to seek legal representation. If you throw the legal analyst bones there of what you think will come out of this, are you optimistic?
No, indeed, I'm optimistic that eventually the truth will come out. And I mean, if we know already Griffiths Mxenge, what he was busy with, as Ntate Mavusa was indicating, that he was actually one of the patriots actually using the law to actually sort of have free and emancipate the oppressed people of the country. So you can clearly see from that movement, he was a spanner in the works for the apartheid regime, the security forces, and they tried to disguise his assassination as an ordinary murder to look like the guy was just after him for some flimsy reason and not really trying to do that. And that's why the order was also to make sure that he is killed in an unconventional way that the security forces would not necessarily use to look like it's somebody that is just a victim of ordinary crime from South Africa. But obviously, I know the investigators has done some legwork, good legwork on this case as well. And I'm sure the perpetrators will be held responsible, and sooner or later we'll see them charged with murder, as we know that murder in South Africa is one of the crimes that cannot be prescribed, and it's a good thing for the South African population, the public interest, that we really know what happened to these people who fought only for something, to freedom, to fight for the South Africans, and which we as lawyers, we glorify our constitution and say the constitution is the governing document of our democracy, our society, and this is what these guys were fighting for, just for equal treatment. They were not looking for special treatment, and for that they were killed. And that for me is not a good enough excuse. Even it doesn't matter if we in what time we are. Their lives didn't need to be ended like that, and people who's responsible for that should be in charge with the offense of murder and not just left unchallenged. And obviously the evidence would tell what's to come in the next couple of days.
Yeah. Well, let's see some of the WhatsApps that have come in. Thank you for that, Alton. 072-110-5584. As we ask you if you believe that certainly we will get the answers of what really took place and led to the deaths of Chief Albert Luthuli as well as lawyer Griffiths, Mxenge. Certainly, will there be justice for their families? 072-110-5584. Let's see some of those WhatsApps that have come in. Kobama Koba says, good evening. Yes, I think the family will get some closure, even if no one will be arrested, because the GNU will protect them. Koba, thank you so much for sending in that message. Thapo Peter Molapisi says, after an interminable odyssey of anguish and uncertainty, the inquest into the tragic demise of Luthuli and Mxenge proffer a beacon of hope for unvarnished truth and unequivocal justice. We stand unwaveringly in solidarity with the bereaved families, vociferously demanding accountability for these egregious and heinous atrocities. Quite a bit of a big English there, Tsepa. Thank you so much for that. Anonymous says, good evening, Aledi. The apartheid regime lies so much about how the deaths of our liberation movement heroes died to cover their tracks for these horrible deaths. On the other hand, we have a compromised NPA that just had a scathing judgment delivered against it in the Omatosha trial. So one is optimistic that the truth will be revealed, but also have a half-empty glass because of that judgment. Well, of course, we're going to get some closing thoughts from our guests just as we wrap this up on the other side of this short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Well, we continue to get to the hopes, really, and certainly some of the projections from our legal analyst, from our guests, as we look at the inquests that have been reopened by the National Prosecuting Authority into the deaths of Chief Albert Luthuli as well as lawyer Griffiths Mxenge. Taking more of your WhatsApps on 072-110-5584. I actually wanted to, as we close off, Mr. Luthuli, get your thoughts on this one, and if you think that this certainly is a moment that sets a precedent, and if your family was watching this one. You've got, for instance, the matter that was sitting in the High Court today that saw of course, this is looking at the matter of the 1982 bombings of two COSIS members in Krugersdorp. And of course, you would have seen that unfolding in the court. Judge Dario Dossio there ruling that there can be no time bar for crimes against humanity. I mean, two big themes there. We're using the words crimes against humanity and no time limit. I mean, what you think about for so many families that are in the same position as your own? I think your mic is off, Mr. Luthuli.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Yes, Naledi, I think it was Elton who earlier on echoed the point that there is no prescription on murder. And the matter of the COSAS 4 this morning just re-emphasizes that particular point. And really on the matter of both the Mxenge family as well as our grandfather, we have a lot to be optimistic about in terms of the capability of the NPA in fully discharging its responsibilities insofar as these matters are concerned, but also the witnesses, the credibility of the witnesses, the different classes of witnesses that will be presenting over the next 30 days. You know, the issue of the pursuit of justice can be painstakingly slow. And therein lies the frustration for some, but eventually it does come. And when it does come, it's a very liberating moment. And that is what we are looking for, not just as a family, but also as a country, insofar as this matter. And that will assist in also setting the historical record straight, insofar as how our grandfather actually died. You know, it's a critical moment. It may seem trivial, but it's actually a very, very, very critical moment for us. But particularly for my two surviving aunts, who are both 93 and 90 years old, who for close to 60 years of their lives have lived not knowing how their father actually died.
That is quite a picture.
Yeah.
And a very long time to live without answers. Elton, I want to wrap this up, and of course, and we'll give closing thoughts as well to Mr. Mxenge, but Elton, I'll come to you now. This issue, once again, there can be no time bar for crimes against humanity. You've talked about that, but I think an important one to raise, because even one of the WhatsApps that we raised said, yes, it's important that we get to the answers of what happened to these two leaders, but a lack of confidence in us seeing anybody held accountable, which is a whole different story altogether, Elton.
No, it's not about seeing somebody. Obviously, one needs to work with the evidence that's available. And because with our two fallen heroes, they fall it's like 50 years plus that they were brutally assassinated / murdered. So it's very difficult to put the evidence together, but I have the confidence that they will get the evidence right. I mean, I take my my cue from the late Abdullah Harun's case, the late Ahmad Timel's case, that the NPA actually got their house in order and they know how to actually do these things. So yes, it takes some time, and people say that there will not be people held accountable. I mean, some of the cases is like these perpetrators of these heinous and atrocities has passed on already. So obviously you cannot go and sentence a man who's already dead. But the ones that's alive, we can hold them accountable. Obviously, also those organizations that they represented, like your old labor parties, the NPs, and those parties that actually brought this regime onto the people of this country. Those organizations is non-existent. Some of them have been absorbed in different organizations. And obviously, you try and find, but you will never find everybody who was involved, because I'm sure there was not just one person, it was a cabal that sat around the table to say, Chief Luthuli must die. There was a cabal that sat around the table and say, Hero Mxenge must die. So I'm sure if one looks at that, you won't find all the people to hold accountable, but we might find some that you can hold accountable in this instance. And I mean, it's 60 years down the line, some of them might just be like maybe 2-3 years left in them before they also die.
Okay, thank you so much. Mr. Mxenge, your final bite, final thoughts that you want to share for us. I'm also keen to hear your call to action perhaps to the NPA.
Well, I believe it's extremely important. The discussion that's taking place today is very, very important. The story of what happened in the past has not been sufficiently told. And it needs to be known, not so much for purpose of blaming one or the other. too much hurt continues to reside with the people of South Africa. And the fact that although we got independence 30 years ago, freedom, we call it in this country, the people who have been suffering economically, socially, continue in that situation more or less. And those who oppressed them in the past seem to be doing even better. And I'm not exaggerating thereafter. This needs to be addressed by the current government, ANC or GNU, for the sake of the investment of in a stable future in South Africa. And people say it's we live in a rainbow nation. I think there is potential for that rainbow, but right now people just laugh you off because the people who oppressed you in the past continue to really behave as if nothing wrong happened. So let's tell the current generation, some of whom are really ignorant, that we need one another in this country. We need to, our stability will come with the improvement of the living conditions of the majority of people in this country. I think that's what I'm taking away from the outcome of the inquest. I really do hope we leave it in the hands of the judges now. The case has been adequately prepared, and one hopes that the best judgment will come out.
Yeah. I think that's a great place for us to close it off as well. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. It really has been appreciated. Mr. Mavuso Mxenge of the ANC Veterans League, Alton Hart, who is a legal expert, speaking to us, and of course, Mr. Sandile Luthuli, who is the grandson of Chief Albert Luthuli. Well, you're still watching Newsfeed PM, the late edition. We've got more news on the other side of this show. Stay with us.